Alduin has returned to eat the world, and only the Dragonborn can stop him, though the prophecy doesn't necessarily say how. I think I'll get the strongest Dead Thrall possible and take credit for its achievements as I use it to save Tamriel. Several years ago, I set out to discover the strongest Dead Thrall in all of Skyrim. Equipped with the Master Conjuration spell of the same name, I tested every NPC you could possibly expect to win the top spot. I battled them against each other and against multiple enemy types many times. I equipped them with enchanted and smithed up weapons and armor, not with exploits though, taking them through a variety of locations, and finally I determined the winners. But there's some new zombies in town, brought into the realm of possibility by Todd Howard when he opened a portal between Skyrim Anniversary Edition and the real world. Today we're going to explore these options, bringing many dead things back to life to discover what new options are good, which ones suck, and ultimately which you'll want to use for your build. With Todd's newest Skyrim, we gain access to a creation called Dreams of the Dead. You go to a Necromancer's lair, solve a puzzle to unlock a player home, and loot all the dark artifacts inside. Among your not very hard-earned rewards, there's even the Staff of Worms, which allows you to unleash the Dead Thrall spell effect with the level-boosting buffs that will feature in this video without needing to complete the Conjuration Ritual spell quest. It also, for unknown reasons, seems to affect certain enemy types that were previously immune to the spell version of Dead Thrall, opening up the possibility of using foes like Falmer, or if we're talking undead specifically, even the most powerful Draugr. But the most important of Manamaku's easily accessible trinkets in Skyrim is this morbid bit of headgear. This necromantic crown is known as the Bloodworm Helm. It is said to be magically constructed out of trollbone, the perfect choice for one trying to troll the Nords and their prophecy with an unsuspected hero. Or heroes, perhaps. You'll have to figure out how to style this helmet though. Maybe bone mold, it's okay. I guess it looks decent with dragonplate armor and your glowing orange eyes. We're going to use it for some double Necromage fun. To discover the very best flesh bags, we'll want the base Necromage perk from the Restoration skill tree to make spells more effective against the undead, and when you're a vampire and you're undead, it boosts a bunch of effects related to you, including perks, powers, spells, enchantments, some standing stones, and even some shouts. If you have the unofficial patch on, download the USS EP Necromage Fix mod if you want to try all of this and keep the vanilla Skyrim Necromage benefits intact. It'll make your vampire build feel truly supernatural, a cut above mere mortals. For Dead Thrall, Necromage will raise the level cap it can affect, in line with the way the perk was intended to function. Instead of being able to permanently reanimate people level 40 and below, you'll be able to go up to level 50 so long as you're using an undead Dead Thrall. It's a tongue twister, I know, but I'm talking about an enemy that was already undead before you killed it, like a vampire. And be careful with your choice, because if an enemy scales with your level and it doesn't have a cap, then they'll end up too strong to resurrect later on. Anyway, the Bloodworm Helm adds to this. Sure, it makes conjuration spells cost 25% less to cast, which does get increased by our Necromage boost, but it also increases damage against undead by 25%. And this last effect was actually just Bethesda whacking the Necromage effect onto it. So we stack Necromage on top of Necromage. Just make sure you're wearing the helmet when you pick your perks, and then you can enjoy things like the Urgnok perk, providing 46.88% spell absorption instead of 37.5%, which is the standard Necromage boost. Jewel Flurry also gets insanely fast. Even Avoid Death gives you way more HP when your health drops below 10%. More on every advantage in this video in the description, but right now we're talking Thralls, and this helmet plus Necromage will allow you to resurrect undead Thralls up to level 62. But wait, there's more. Today we've ordered a triple serving of Necromage courtesy of the Bone Wolf pet effect from the Bone Wolf creation. This increases your damage against undead and necromancers by 25%, including physical attacks, and apparently this used to stack on top of the helmet to give us triple Necromage mayhem, adding even more to perks, powers, and so on, but Bethesda patched that, but they didn't patch it increasing your spell potency against undead, of course, which means undead Dead Thralls can be affected up to even high levels, up to level 78 in fact. That extra bit about Necromancers also applies, allowing you to resurrect enemies of that type up to level 50, like a level 46 Arch Necromancer if desired. Necromage with the helmet and the Bone Wolf can get the Ritual Stone past its level cap of 75 all the way to level 146 for undead reanimations, but you won't really be finding many undead enemies at that level, and you'll get the downsides of the Ritual Stone, like fast travel being a hassle. But for Thralls who can last longer than 60 seconds before going limp and can stay upright without a 24-hour break before round 2, there's many new options to explore. Let me take you back to a better time. Chug on Vaemina's Torpor and enter the Dreamstride. The year is 2019. The timeline-bending Dragon Break of 2020 hasn't happened yet. We don't have epic mods to make things as looks maxed as Sven's jawline, but we do have a list of the best Dead Thralls prior to Anniversary Edition. Luckily, our favorites were vampires, who came in the top spot if using the right ones with the right gear. We tested unique characters like Ulfric Stormcloak and the Champion of Boethia, though these rarely came anywhere near first place. Dagon's favorite minions also weren't up to the task, particularly without being able to smith up their armor. People love Ancano, but he was pretty sluggish and didn't tend to use the variety of spells he has. Proper testing is a major key because stats don't tell the full story. Aggression and battlefield intelligence make the biggest difference. For example, the Master Conjurer didn't tend to conjure things and fought more like an elemental mage. I found that Forsworn Briarhearts often had surprisingly bad AI compared to Ravagers. Cryo and Pyromancers are powerful but die too fast. Falmer Agent to Stormo just didn't have the sauce. People swear by him and Sulla Trebatius, but they both died too quickly and dealt less damage than the best meat sacks. Malkaran is very aggressive and sends out Icy Spear and Ice Storm at the same time, but he spawns one of those corrupted shades from Meridia's quest upon death, and it comes with 300 health points and attacks you. Sebastian Lort from the Clavicus Vial quest is also a Breton with the same stats of 500 health, 460 magicka and 25 stamina. He often summons an Atronach, has solid DPS, but tends to stick to precision-based spells which often miss. Howden, the boss you battle in Rise in the East, does wear armor and can switch to a two-handed weapon between spellcasting if you give it to him. However, he's unaggressive, and given enough time you'll see that sometimes he even flees, which is not a vibe. Sild the Warlock, that Mohawk Nord with the Cage Trap, is extremely aggressive and just spams tons of area damage fireballs, which ended up better than mages primarily using expert spells. He was the second best named Mage Thrall, the best being Orchendor. You kill this Bosmer in the Periite quest, and with over 600 magicka and just under 1100 health, at his maxed out level of 40, plus 100 magic resistance including resistance to shouts, he's a respectable choice. He uses flesh spells and grand healing to stay alive and can unleash Incinerate, Icy Spear and Thunderbolt. I mean, what else? Can he spit poison? Sure he can. Oh, and why not teleportation? This makes him very temporarily invincible while the purple magic is visible, and while it kinda keeps him right near the same place he uses it, it confuses enemies and helps him to stay alive. Rank 5 down to 12 prior to Anniversary Edition would look something like this, with enhanced meaning I've improved their gear with maxed out crafting skills, but without any extra mile bonuses to fortify smithing and enchanting via things like the restoration loop and so on. Yamaz is a tank with 1200 points of health and a full set of armor to smith up, but he just blocks way too much. He often runs into walls or gets stuck, and he just dies where other Thralls don't. I tested the Master Cultist and the best Reavers from the Dragonborn DLC, and Reavers function like Bandit Chiefs, though seemingly a little less optimized in many ways like aggression. The top 4 ranks looked like this. These were ultimately better choices than mages in general due to their excellent AI and love of melee attacks, especially with physical weapons being able to be smithed and even enchanted to do things like absorb health. Krev the Skinner from the Silver Hand is known to be a great thrall, but through testing I found he's basically a named Bandit Chief. The level 28 capped Bandit Chief just has a way of timing bashes perfectly, interrupting enemy power attacks and aggressively streaming together all kinds of directional power attacks of their own, but it's gotta be a one-handed and shield variant. Such a setup is usually usually the best for Thralls in general. Level 28 Chiefs have 497 health and 258 stamina, and will defeat Orchendor super fast if they get close with a Daedric weapon and shield, even unenchanted. They kill very fast but aren't extremely tanky, though you can smith up their gear to stop them from dying, plus you are a Necromancer. In a worst case scenario, reviving dead stuff is kind of your thing. The Ancient Vampire ends up even better if given a powerful war axe and a shield. It won't stay back and play it safe like some other spellcasters do, mainly because its Vampiric Drain spell only works at closer ranges, which forces it to run into action. That said, it still knows how to maintain distance from melee strikes, and can then switch to the best shield and axe you've given it and tear things up. It even comes with multiple perks for melee combat. It has 583 health, 348 magicka and 224 stamina, and wears vampire armor, which you can enhance. They also have the typical vampire resistances, weaknesses, and buffs, and some neat perks such as magic resistance. On rare occasion, they'll reanimate something with the Revenant spell, giving you another companion temporarily, which works to distract and wear down enemies. It's also buffed because the Ancient Vampire actually has the Dark Souls perk itself. Spells, weapons, aggression, and toughness. Perfect. With the Necromage perk, you'll be able to resurrect a level 48 Volkihar vampire, which is just the same thing on steroids, coming in with 823 health, 413 magicka, and 294 stamina. It has even better melee damage perks, 2 ranks of magic resistance instead of just 1, and it uses the adept area damage destruction spells for frost and shock, which are great. It will also use an axe and shield. You'll want to only give them swords or war axes, as they have 3 ranks of the relevant one-handed perks, but not the one for maces. But vampires aren't the only undead in the top end of town. Not anymore. The Staff of Worms grants users access to Draugr. As you'd expect, I went straight to testing Draugr Death Overlords. These start appearing when you're level 50. They're level 45, and while they might have a measly 30 armor rating, they make up for it with 1400 health, 700 points of stamina, and a horned helmet similar to the Helm of Ingol. These ruthless zombies will not hesitate to shout your weapon out of your hand or Forsworn you off a cliff. Why not use that against your enemies? They might not have armor to improve, but you can still give them a deadly one-handed weapon and a shield. I tested all manner of Draugr, including the named bosses like Corelmil and Red Eagle, who are essentially the same with around 100 points more health. By the way, these high-level boss Draugr have a chance of appearing as dragon priests, so make sure you save outside their lair. My favorite was Warlord Gathric, largely because he's large. This upscaled Draugr boss found at Ironbind Barrow is an absolute monster. However, like all Draugr, I have ultimately concluded that they're going to be a vibes choice. Now, while they're a suitable companion for any Lich King type of build, they just slam the taunt button all the time. Seriously, when they fight well or disarm a powerful enemy or shout them to the floor, it's really cool. But they just take forever to kill enemies because they taunt non-stop in so many ways, even in the heat of battle or with a barrage of arrows coming down on them. Don't get me wrong, they're still strong thralls, but their general combat IQ is low. Watch Gathric just keep having beef with this mountain instead of helping me. Watch them shout me to the ground, providing distance support. Look, they're worth testing out for your Necromancer build, especially if you want to use a group of them for the look, but for pure efficiency, they're just not going to be a death machine you can always rely on. I should mention that Anniversary Edition also provides access to a new enchantment called Empowered Necromancy, which you can get by disenchanting Ascendant Necromancer robes, which you'll find courtesy of the Necromantic Grimoire creation. This effect increases the summon limit by 1 for lesser conjured or reanimated undead, but Dead Thrall only works on 2 targets still, but the Staff of Worms can be used in combination or completely on its own to have 3 Dead Thralls, as long as you can already get 2 because of your conjuration perks. And honestly, when you're choosing your Thralls, a lot of it can come down to personal preference, so if you're a ranged build, you might want melee Thralls only, or if you're a melee only build, you might want only ranged, or perhaps perhaps you want a mix. You get the idea, just something to keep in mind as we explore the very best contenders, and I end up saying what I think are the best. Anniversary Edition also added other Draugr-like beings which I tested, that being Dread Zombies from the Plague of the Dead creation, and Ayleid White Lords added from the Cause creation. They both have better battle IQ than Draugr in my testing. At level 40 with 625 stamina and 1440 HP, 1540 when you have the Dark Souls perk, the Dread Zombie truly feels like you slipped a Zin pouch into the strongest Draugr to keep him focused and on task at the cost of not being able to shout. He can still taunt, and he will, which you might find annoying, but not nearly as much as Draugr, and I found him to be more reliable, just without the magical movie moments that come from undead friends who can shout. His AI won't be as smooth as a true humanoid NPC, but he's a respectable member of any Necromancer's team. He doesn't have armor though, so he'll never truly be the best, but he does technically have the ability to have a shield you give him equipped when you check his corpse, which you could use to your advantage. Also, he had 30% magic resistance when I checked with console commands. Ayleid White Lords have none and can vary in base stats. They function very similarly to Dread Zombies. I gave an archer one an axe to use and he'd switch between both melee and ranged, but only had 800 health. A bit of a slow moving archer who got staggered plenty, which is never ideal. A stronger melee one with 1000 health and 545 stamina functioned like a Dread Zombie, just with less health. It was pretty aggressive, maybe even more so than the zombie, it is hard to tell, and got the job done and would sometimes use the bow I gave him. They can also equip a shield you can give them and actually use it to block, even though it doesn't show and just looks like they're tanking the blow with their forearm, but again, no actual armor for you to take, improve, and re-equip. They can all use these kind of Draugr-based flurry attacks where they unleash 2 swings in one scripted movement, able to kill 2 enemies very quick if they both land. Rieklings can now be accessed as well thanks to the Staff of Worms. If you've ever wondered if a Riekling is the best Dead Thrall, you're welcome. Subscribe to us on Patreon to support more epic research like this. Unfortunately, none of the mounted Rieklings could be resurrected, so there's no bristleback rider mayhem to be found. Melee Rieklings will not equip your melee weapons, but the missile versions who throw spears, which are technically just arrows, can be given Daedric arrows to hurl, and while it seemed like they wouldn't equip my smithed up dragonbone bow, for some reason they did equip Auriel's bow, giving them access to its stats. With 352 health and no armor to smith up, they're just not going to be the best Dead Thralls. They're slower than true archers, not super accurate, but hey, it's pretty hilarious to have them run around killing things by giving them strong damage output gear. Maybe you're going for some sort of undead Guardians of the Galaxy squad feel. I don't know, to each their own, I suppose. I also just had to test the Falmer. Hunched horror shows who hide beneath the surface, waiting for the day you'll stumble into Blackreach. I saw people pointing out that they could be resurrected by the Staff of Worms, and if you're like me and you've held a grudge against them and their pesky poisons and pets for over a decade, maybe you'd want to turn the tables and have them serve you. Many people online have claimed they're an excellent choice, so it's my duty to see what the fuss is. But as corrupted as these snow elves have become, they're technically not undead, meaning that we can't actually resurrect any of the strongest ones above level 40 as lasting Dead Thralls. This limits our options quite a bit, mostly to Night Prowlers and Shadow Masters. Having a crew of Falmer archers is fun, sometimes, but they're just too slow in combat and seem to lock on from a distance and then just get cautious, which gets annoying in the long term. My favorite of the Falmer in terms of playstyle only were the Spell Swords, because they'd constantly shoot chain lightning at foes and they fought quite aggressively too. They basically just felt like a melee-based Falmer with ranged magic capabilities, kind of like how vampires use both. Falmer below level 40 don't tend to have Falmer armor for you to improve, often just a helmet, even if visually they appear in armor. However, melee Falmer Shadow Masters, particularly one variant added in the Dawnguard DLC, does have Falmer heavy gauntlets, boots, and the chest piece equipped. It has 700 health, 273 magicka, and 362 stamina. I then buffed the armor massively and gave it an enchanted axe. The problem is that just like the others, they can get staggered way too much, and their movement is super unreliable at times. With the right gear, they could be among your permanent thralls, as they're definitely still strong, but they'll never be the best. That said, there is one Falmer with a superior skin routine. I'm talking about one who has not been corrupted, at least not in the same way. Introducing Arch-Curate Vyrthur from the Dawnguard DLC. Maybe he's the best Dead Thrall since Anniversary Edition dropped. Many do claim that he is, and I wanted to find out why. Vyrthur is 100% the highest level vampire you can Dead Thrall. His level is calculated as the player plus 20%. He caps out at level 75 with 1140 health, 570 magicka, and a whole host of spells including Command Daedra. He begins battle by conjuring a Frost Atronach and usually pops on a Frost Cloak as well. His Drain Life vampire spell can have him aggressively chase down foes while spamming Ice Storm and Icy Spear to obliterate them with ease. But he also has the Lightning Bolt spell. That is an apprentice level projectile, which is not only weak, but he often misses with it, and he loves using it. Sometimes he's accurate, but other times, he can miss like 5 times in a row, and it's super frustrating. His AI pathing can be good when he's on his Drain Life Aggression warpath, but outside of that, he can actually be pretty lackluster. I saw enemies flee from him often, and I have a feeling it's because his low damage shock spell just has a higher chance of getting enemies down to very low health without fully killing them outright. He comes with 3 pieces of Ancient Falmer armor, plus the previously unobtainable crown if you've got the unofficial patch, all of which you'll be able to smith up and enchant. More armor slots are better with Thralls, though even when I fortified his magicka a lot, it still wasn't long before he could get stuck in an inaccurate weak shock spell loop. Vyrthur unfortunately didn't appear to want to wield any weapons I gave him when he was actually in combat. I gave him one-handed gear and a shield. I even tried Oriel's bow with some arrows. To his credit, he does have 2 ranks of Augmented Frost and Augmented Shock, whereas the strongest generic named vampires only have 1 rank of Augmented Frost. So with spells like Icy Spear and Ice Storm, it'll be those Frost ones you'll hope he casts. Using Vyrthur can be effective as far as pure mages go, but that's kind of the issue. As we get into the best Thralls, we want to be able to give them the best weaponry, stuff that deals over 100 points of damage, much more if possible. His AI is also unreliable, and he won't be taking a top 3 spot in the Anniversary Edition list despite being level 75. By the way, when you fast travel to a city and you don't see your Thrall, try waiting an hour, and if they don't spawn in, go check the stables of the city where horses are kept. Seems like they're set up as mounts. Hey, don't look at me, I didn't make the game. Now, high-level Necromancers can also be accessed due to the Bone Wolf effect, so I wanted to test those. Who wouldn't want to have Thralls that raise minions of their own? Unfortunately, they don't. I mean, it's possible, but they basically act like elemental mages, or at best, like conjurers. Similarly to choices like Sebastian Lort, a lot of the best mages that people love just end up as these 500 to 600 health frost maxis, and it gets very hard to pick and choose exact rankings. Someone wanted me to test Arundel, who fought quite aggressively but died far too quickly and didn't seem too interested in reanimating the Fallen, plus he's a definite creep, that's for sure. There's an orc leader of a Spellsword Coven who resides in South Fringe Sanctum named Bashnag. When I used the console to click on him, he's level 46 and labeled as an Arch Necromancer, but he couldn't actually be thralled. The standard Arch Necromancer was solid. With 545 health and 500 magicka, this level 46 mage didn't seem to reanimate stuff, but does have the spells Dread Zombie and Revenant. They have Turn Greater Undead, Close Wounds, Grand Healing, and Iron Flesh. They also have Ice Storm and the Icy Spear expert spell. They're accurate enough, and they could even equip and sometimes use a Daedric Axe and Shield, but they don't have combat perks and they stagger often. It played kind of like an ancient vampire in that sense, just without combat perks or vampiric drain, though they do have rank 2 of Augmented Frost. The Master Necromancer of the Necromancer bosses category specifically is level 40, so very available for use. It has slightly lower stats, 500 health and 410 magicka. Mine had 460 magicka, probably from its robes or hood. Now functionally it has the same spells and perks as the Arch Necromancer, except it has Destruction, Dual Casting, and Impact to help stagger foes, and it uses Ice Spike a lot instead of Icy fancy spear, but it uses them like an aimbot with a super high fire rate. Now, this was actually pretty commendable, and while it won't use weapons you give it, I couldn't fault someone for wanting to enjoy using it in a team of melee thralls for very reliable ranged support. I liked it more than the Arch Necromancer for this reason, because for what the Arch Necromancer offers, you may as well just use a high tier vampire. I also tested the Necromancer known as Ivara of Ollenveld from the Staff of Hasadoki quest, and she was a decent mage, similar to other generic Necromancers, though notably would summon an 800 health Wrathman, which helped to smash foes and distract them. She does have 3 ranks of magic resistance, which is nice, 2 ranks of augmented frost, and 3 ranks of mage armor. She has 525 health when I tested her, 100 more with Dark Souls of course, but most notably people enjoy her because she has the Staff of Hasadoki, which can ragdoll targets to the floor. However, you can actually just give this staff to other thralls, like vampires if you want, negating any need for Ivara, unless you just prefer her as a capable mage for general purposes. One problem with robed mages too is that their gear is usually enchanted already, and they're not wearing armor for you to smith up. I tried out so many NPCs added to Anniversary Edition by every creation there is, and I went so overkill with the testing. I had this huge pile of bodies with things like unicorns and ordinators and netchers, whatever you can imagine. I tried it, and I wanted to show you the aftermath, but it seems everything got so complicated I couldn't load the save without the game crashing. Maybe there are some sights the world doesn't need to see. Heaps of things added can't be thralled, like ash zombies, and other NPCs just scale too high as you level. So in general, if you're watching and thinking, why doesn't Michael use XYZ super powerful NPC, it's almost definitely because their level goes out of range. Some of the Mythic Dawn cultists spammed fireballs, which reminded me of Sealed the Warlock, but they're basically just recoded bandits. Their ID, which I can check with console commands, says as much when I click them, and a lot of Creation Club NPCs are kind of just copy-pastes of other things but dressed and named differently. Like when I tested certain NPCs from the Saints and Seducers creation, characters like Svarig basically seem like one of the many forms of vanilla bandits, and while they summon a Dark Seducer, they just don't have this mystical bandit chief aggression with the better perks and slightly better stats. Bandit chiefs really are special, I'm telling you. You might vibe this Namira worshipping Khajiit called Alvasorr the Rat from the Alternative Armor's Dragonplate creation. I wanted to let you know about him because he can switch between melee, a bow, and magic, which makes him a fun pick. He's very aggressive, and his magic includes destruction spells, wards, healing, and a flesh spell. Now, sometimes he was super competent, but other times his AI was terrible, so he'll never be ranked as the very best. But again, he is very aggressive, and he can even use a shield if you give him one. He can use 3 forms of combat against you when you first fight him, and he can use all 3 as your Dead Thrall, which can work great when you improve his gear. His armor can be smithed up, but his uniquely named helmet cannot. The problem again is that he's just unreliable, and sometimes he'll use one combat form when he should be probably using another. So super aggressive, very versatile, definitely fun, but in some ways you could say he has too many choices. His level is also Radiant, so it goes up to level 25 from what I can tell, but you might run into a weaker version of him being level 1 or 14 or 19 or 9, regardless of your own level. If you do find him at level 25, he has 441 health, 541 with Dark Souls, 294 Magicka, and 150 stamina, but you have to keep loading into Arcwind Point over and over during the quest and be able to check his level until he spawns with the level you want, which can be quite annoying. There is another Creation Club NPC more worthy of mention. In Alternative Armor's Dwarven Mail, there's a quest called Fan Favorite that has you track down this Orc Bandit turned Gladiator. This Bloodletter wears a full set of enchanted Dwarven Mail, meaning you can't enchant it, but you can still smith it up and give it back along with a shield and war axe, and even a bow. His skill is in two-handed, but I still think just go one-handed and shield. It just ends up better, especially when you're smithing up their weapons. You're just giving them the damage, with the smithed up item. The name of this NPC is Urgnok, and he fights kind of similarly to a bandit chief, but instead of having 597 health, that's with the Dark Souls perk, and 258 stamina, he has 754 health and 280 stamina, at least on my level 81 vanilla maxed character. He's level 40, and look, I personally don't think he fights just as good as a bandit chief, but he can feel pretty close if you give him a good weapon. I think because he returns a confidence score of 3, whereas the bandit chief and some of our other top contenders return a score of 4 when you use the console command get av confidence, it just causes them to fight a little bit better, but they all do have the same aggression score, it seems. Confidence of 4 is supposedly called foolhardy instead of brave, but for thralls like the bandit chief, you kind of just want them to attack any and every enemy, ready to fight to the death. Also, something to keep in mind is that ordinarily when you enchant your thrall's gear, they actually lose the 100 points of health bonus from your Dark Souls perk, so you'll want to make sure whatever enchantments you provide are worth it. Now, I remember this happening, it's on the wikis if you look online, however, for some reason this wasn't happening with my game, so I couldn't test if Urgnok would lose 100 points of health in your game simply for existing with enchanted gear. It's not a huge deal anyway, but something to keep in mind. You'll need to go through a loading screen so a thrall's armor you gave back to them becomes equipped, and the fun of them running around naked is over. So if you're an enchanting character who wants to push the envelope, you'll want to stick with the bandit chief here, because you could just make them souped up with plus 300 health and so on. Look, maybe 5,000 if you're just a game breaker like that. But if you're not an enchanting character, then Urgnok already coming with enchanted gear might be your preference. When I looked through his enchanted gear, he had 20% stamina regen, 15% magic resistance, plus 40 health, and he does have 1 to fortify one-handed, but I'm not confident it works because this enchantment is not something that affects followers usually. More on that soon. Overall, Urgnok is a decent warrior, a bit tankier than a bandit chief, just a little less confident. I'd still prefer the chief personally for the slightly better confidence and combat talent. I just love their deadly bash perk and how they seem to just unleash bashes on multiple enemies in quick succession before finishing them off with flurries of melee strikes. But for all the testing I've done, for all the times I've read that Draugr are the best, or Vyrthur is the best, or a mud crab is god tier, I would have to conclude that newly accessible, extremely strong, generically named vampires are still going to win against everything else. And while I understand that deciding on a best option is subjective in some ways, and certain builds may favor certain thralls and so on, I would still argue that vampires are the best all round due to their stats, perks, spells, and overall performance in combat through extensive testing and trying. Though there is another thrall I want to talk about after, which I think you're going to love, but let's cover the blood drinkers first. Above the level 48 Volkihar vampire, which was accessible via the Necromage perk, is a level 53 vampire boss variant known as the Volkihar Master Vampire. It knows the same spells, but has 968 health instead of 823, 458 magicka instead of 413, 354 stamina instead of 294. But above that is a level 60 Night Lord vampire that comes with the same perks, but has the expert spells Icy Spear and Thunderbolt, and has slightly better health and magicka, being 1031 and 486 respectively, but 313 stamina instead of 354. But above that, our triple Necromage setup allows us to Dead Thrall the level 65 vampire boss known as the Nightmaster Vampire, who has 1226 health, 531 magicka, and 378 stamina. Also, try to find those who come with vampire boots, armor, and gauntlets so you have more slots to enhance.
Now for the feast.
And make sure that the armor isn't already enchanted. You want non-enchanted stuff so you can change it yourself. I truly believe that given a war axe or sword and a shield, these two vampires are the best Dead Thralls in Skyrim, particularly if you're not a smithing or enchanting character. However, if you are, then you may prefer to use a very buffed up bandit chief or two instead, or mix them with Nightmaster vampires. But before you think we're done here, I have to admit that in my initial testing, I quickly overlooked Forsworn Ravagers due to how quickly they die in battle. However, the Archer variant specifically, with 447 health, 116 magicka, and 182 stamina, has proven to be incredibly powerful when, and only when, given a smithed up bow and enhanced armor. So you'll want to find an Archer Ravager who has gauntlets, boots, the main armor piece of course, and the headdress for the 4th slot. If you go above and beyond with your buffing, it can get absolutely insane. The Ravager comes with the fast healing spell, as well as the respite, recovery, and regeneration perks from restoration. It comes with 2 ranks of magic resistance, which should add 20% magic resistance to the 25% they already have as a Breton, though when I used the getav console command, it was sometimes only showing 25%, which is still good to have, though other times it did show the fully combined 45%. Again, I didn't build the game. And by the way, you should opt for Breton vampires as well for the same reason. Even more important to the Ravager are the archery perks Power Shot, Quick Shot, and Ranger, making the Ravager move faster with the bow, draw it faster, and stagger enemies super often. It also has an NPC perk called Extra Damage 2.5, which just increases its damage, and this perk is actually found on the Bandit Chiefs as well as the vampires we're using, so it's not unique to the Ravager. Ravagers also have the custom fit perk, just another reason to find one with all 4 armor slots equipped in the first place. The problem of the Ravager dying easily makes them a bit of a glass cannon if you're not a crafting build, but if you're willing to use a hefty Fortify Health enchantment and Fortify Light armor and smith that armor up high enough to make even Malakath proud, you're going to have a great time. Compared to any other archer I tested, this one had the best AI and was very accurate. The only issue is that the AI of archers in general can be less aggressive, or they get stuck awkwardly behind cover, or won't run into battle indoors when the enemy is in another room, which ultimately still has me prefer enhanced Bandit Chiefs and Vampires over the Ravager Archer. But I would almost give a maxed out Ravager Archer, like truly maxed out, a top 3 spot if you're going to be building a team of 3. Seriously, give it a go. Again, if you don't buff up the armor and health, it's just going to die faster than the other buffed up options here. You can also give it a powerful one-handed weapon to use in close quarters when necessary, but its best work is done with arrows. You should know that Thrall enchantments in general are similar to the limited list of follower enchantments, meaning you can't boost weapon damage with Fortify skill boosts, except the armor skills do work, which can massively increase a Thrall's armor rating. You also can't reduce casting cost and so on, but you can give them magic resistance and boost the base stats of magicka health and stamina, as well as their regen. Magic resistance, or just fire resistance, really helps vampire thralls too. Just keep in mind that unless your thrall comes with jewelry, magic resistance needs to go on a shield. Overall, it gets as crazy as you're willing to take it. The more you boost smithing and enchanting into exploit tier territory, the more that the thrall's behavior and fighting style matters compared to its stats. To exaggerate, to make a point, you could say that a thrall with 1 HP and an iron dagger becomes the best, with a 1000 damage Daedric axe and 3000 HP from overly boosted enchantments, so long as he has the right perks and the right aggression and so on. At the very least, it makes you care less about smaller differences in stats. Loving the Nightmaster Vampire, the boosted Ravager, and Bandit Chief the most, I'm going to try and take all 3 to Sovngarde. It does look like they don't teleport through with us once Oda Ving flies us to Skaldarfen. But I could bring these Draugr with me into Sovngarde. How about that? They even defeated Alduin. Kind of. It does appear that after all, the joke is on me. It seems I have to strike the killing blow. Only my final fist tap could stop Alduin. I guess my thralls did all the work though. The people of Skyrim owe these zombies their endless thanks, but I have a feeling they won't be making it into the history books. I had a lot of fun making this video. Vampires are still the best, just better ones than before. So much testing and new Dead Thralls to consider. Enjoy your team of Rieklings, I know someone's going to do it. Thank you for watching. Let me know your personal favorite Dead Thrall. Maybe you can't get enough of the Draugr or the Dread Zombie, or you have a preference I didn't cover. This was the strongest Dead Thrall in Skyrim, and I'll be back to nerd out with you again very soon.